This is exactly how I would teach a literal 5-year-old to grow a profitable, ethical YouTube channel. The entirety of YouTube can be boiled down into these two things: content themes and audiences. Content themes are groups of topics that all of your videos on your channel will be about, like, for example, American professional sports. Audiences are groups of people who are similar in some way that all like your content theme. For example, white American men in their 30s and 40s who like football. Therefore, your entire mission as a YouTuber is to determine what group of topics, aka content thematic, your channel is going to be about, and which group of people do you want to watch those videos. Now, you cannot target all groups of people who like that content theme, because the way you attract an audience is by speaking to them with your titles and thumbnails, and you cannot speak the language that white American men in their 30s and 40s like at the same time as you try to speak the language that 14-year-old black girls like who like football, because they're completely different people. So if you can pick a content theme and an audience and then show that audience that you understand them, you will win on YouTube. So the question then becomes, well, how do you do that? How do you pick an audience, and how do you signal that these videos are for them? I personally believe it's best to start with picking an audience, because getting people to click and getting them to stick around is all about human psychology. That means it's who they are in their own mind that makes them click on the video, not what the video is actually about. That's a bit trippy. Let's go deeper on this. So to pick your audience, ask yourself this very simple question: what group of people do I understand the most? Now, for most people, that will be people who are similar to who you are in some way. Like if you're a slightly socially awkward single guy in your 30s who likes sports and is struggling financially, that's probably the audience you should try and make your videos for, because you can speak directly into that person's soul. You know how they feel, why they feel it, and what words they use to describe the things that they feel. And that last bit on words is really important, and I'll explain why in a second. But for other people, like myself, maybe you just don't really vibe with your peer group. So when I was a kid, my dad always used to say Archer is 6 going 60, because my thought process and the way I spoke clicked better with people in that age bracket. I was always talking about saving money and going to Scotland where there was free university tuition. Obviously, that's not what most 6-year-olds think about, but I did. So when I was 18, I started making YouTube videos. At first, I actually failed because I'd forgotten who I am and what I was like. I was making videos for teenagers, but that was a terrible idea because I'd never really understood teenagers because I'd never really felt like one. So it was only when I said, wait a second, what if I just made videos for people aged 60 and upwards? That almost every channel I launched succeeded time and time again. And that's partially because of what I said earlier about words being really important. The words on titles and thumbnails and in the opening hook in the video are what either turn on or off the audience to your video. So you need to know the exact phrases your audience like to use. Now, you might already have these phrases in your brain, in which case just brainstorm them out and then try and use those words in your titles. But if you don't know them or can't immediately think of like 50 plus, just go to ChatGPT or Claude and ask it to give you an Excel spreadsheet of 200 common phrases or slang words specific to your audience's culture, with a column full of explanations on what each of them mean. Here's an example that I made earlier focusing on young Christian American women. So why am I telling you to do this? Because the first step in growing your YouTube channel after picking an audience is brainstorming interesting titles and thumbnails. Since that decides whether you'll ever get clicks and therefore any views, you need to start there. So write or type out loads of video ideas for different video topics and see which of them connect best with your chosen audience. I'll explain how to judge this later in a couple minutes time, but if you can do that well, it's time to go looking for thumbnail inspiration. You could look for thumbnail ideas from videos with similar topics to your own videos, but that's obvious and I can guarantee you everyone else has already done that. So you want to look further afield for inspiration to make sure when you post videos with good thumbnails, those thumbnails have never been seen before by your audience. However, you do want to pick thumbnails from channels that will have audiences with a similar psychological profile. For example, Christian women and women who like tarot card readings are extremely different ideologically speaking, but the psychological profile of them is actually quite similar. They're looking for meaning and purpose in something slightly mystical that can't be fully understood by a person, but there is comfort and support and guidance available in those places. That means those two totally separate content themes are actually really good reference points for titles, thumbnails, and hooks, and you can actually see that taking place on YouTube already. If you look, there are loads of phrasing similarity between these videos, even though the themes are totally different. And if you remember what I said back in the beginning of the video on how I'd use these techniques in this video, if you look at my title and thumbnail about how to teach a 5-year-old, you'll see that I actually got that idea from Nate Herc, who makes AI automation videos, which is a different niche to my channel, but with a similar audience profile. See, I told you this stuff works. Okay, so you've gotten good titles to speak to your audience and thumbnails that they'll connect with. Now you just need to actually turn those ideas into scripts, do a voiceover, edit the video, and you're good to go. But before we get to that, let's do a little bit of planning. We need to check how many ideas you have, how different they are, and if they all serve your intended audience. Because there's nothing more devastating than making 2 really good videos that get loads of views, followed by 50 videos which suck and get almost no views. And that's not an exaggeration. Look at all these channels that fell into this trap. So you've got your big list of titles or video ideas like I do here. I want you to just, using your own judgment, pick the top 20% and discard the other 80%. Because when you're first starting out, most of your ideas suck, and that's okay. So with that remaining 20%, I want you to judge 2 things. 1, how close are they to your specific content theme? And 2, how focused are those videos at targeting the audience you intend? If we look at my list here, you'll notice a few things. All of these videos are 20th century focused, and all of them are about weather events. So my content theme is crystal clear. But my audience, let's look a bit closer. Most of these videos are about American weather events, but this video, called the 1953 London Storm that changed the nation, is about a British weather event. That's arguably for a different audience. Yes, people who are interested in meteorology might be interested, but they're biased to events that happened where they live. So if I have 8 videos about America and 1 about the UK, chances are the UK video is going to perform very poorly because I've got an American audience. For more context on that, that's why political channels are very often focused on a specific country or theme like war. So there are subtle differences in titles and video ideas that can signal different groups, and your job is to go through your list of video ideas and see if any of the words that signal who the video is for might point towards someone who is not a part of your ideal audience group. And then either those videos can be discarded or reframed to focus more on your ideal audience. But what if you wanted to cover a broader audience, like both the US and the UK viewers, because you want to maximize the number of views you get on your videos? I'll get to that in a second, but going back to the actual scripting part of these videos, I'll be honest, script writing is really hard. Starting with a blank page is really scary, and that's why most people in 2026 just default to using AI to write their script for them. But that's a massive mistake. Not just because YouTube is demonetizing channels with AI scripts, but because AIs like ChatGPT and Claude are not trained to write specific YouTube videos. They are trained to write either formally in a sort of academic sense, or like very general writing that they've seen online, which isn't from YouTube videos. So here's how you can use AI correctly to help you write killer YouTube scripts. For each of your videos, I want you to find an existing popular video on that channel that you like the flow and style of and makes you think, yeah, if I knew how to write YouTube videos, I'd want them to be like this. Well, good news, today's that day. Using a free Chrome extension like Glass.io, you can very easily extract that video's full transcript, copy-paste it into ChatGPT, and ask it to give you a structured breakdown of that video and to give you a basic template generalization so you can rebuild that script with the info for your specific video. To do this effectively, you'll need a really detailed prompt, and I've put a template for one of those in my School community, which you can get access to at the link in the description. And over on School, you'll get help from me directly as well, just like one of our members, Naman, did, and he went from $0 to $18,000 on YouTube in literally just 2 months. Anyway, whilst you're building from this template, what you'll realize is that yes, the general structure is really useful to you, but to really connect the dots between those different parts of your video for it to feel natural, you have to make decisions. And those decisions, which you can improve over time, are exactly what will transform you into a good writer. Because you've seen what great scripts read like, you've stripped them back to their fundamentals, and then you've rebuilt them into something new. This is a really fast way of making scripts and getting good at writing. It's like the bicycle training wheels of the writer's world. Now, one of those decisions and changes to those script templates you'll have to make is when to open and close loops in the video, which is simply when you plant an idea in the viewer's head, but you don't give them the answer to that idea until later on. Now, I've done this multiple times already in this video. Let's actually review them together now. Earlier on in the video, I asked, so the question then becomes, how do you do that? How do you pick an audience, a content theme, and how do you signal to them that these videos are for them? Show that audience that you understand them, you will win on YouTube. So the question then becomes, well, how do you do that? How do you pick an audience, and how do you signal that these videos are for them? Now, those are rhetorical questions, and they're a really easy kind of open loop to create because you're literally forcing your viewer to think about those questions and wait for the answer. Another way that I did this was I said something like, I will explain this to you later in the video or in a couple minutes time. And that last bit on words is really important, and I'll explain why in a second. That's another very simple open loop. But there are more subtle open loops that you can create, and we can even call these curiosity loops. So I used one in the hook of this video when I said, there's no algorithm or trend hacks here. And I said that because most YouTube growth advice videos focus on the YouTube algorithm, like all of these videos here, claiming that the YouTube algorithm has changed, but honestly, most of those videos are completely useless to beginners because the small changes to the YouTube algorithm don't impact small channels who have no views, they only impact really big channels. So by saying I'm not going to talk about those things, it might have made you curious about what I actually had to say. Now, this is arguably a pattern interrupt as well, but anyway, I'm getting off topic. So essentially, getting good at creating open loops, which you can actually do with your script or the visuals in your video, is the key to pulling viewers from the start of the video to the 30% mark, the 50%, and all the way to the end of the video. So round about now, you're in a pretty good position. You've gotten titles and thumbnails, and all that's left now is like editing the videos and actually launching your channel, which it turns out is slightly more nuanced than just literally clicking upload. But first, let's talk about editing really quickly. To keep things really simple, make your video edits simple. It's easier to capture a style of editing and feel for the video when you try to do less effects, less cuts, less transitions. Just pick an editing style that your audience feel comfortable with, and a style that matches the vibe of your script, and a style that you can either do yourself or afford to pay somebody else to do for you. And that's it for editing. There's no need to overcomplicate it because in almost all cases, editing is secondary to writing and packaging. Which brings me to launching your channel. The best way to do this is by releasing multiple videos in quick succession and then slowly releasing follow-up videos. This is the best method because when a viewer watches your first video, you want them to start binging your content. And they can't do that if you've only uploaded one video. So at a bare minimum, upload 2 videos within 24 hours to start with, ideally 3 videos, and then quickly follow up with new videos every 3 to 4 days. Now, that might mean making 5 videos before you even launch your channel, so that you've given yourself enough time to make them. And that's actually an advantage, because now you've got more time to get experience and judge those videos, and you can reiterate on them so that they're actually good by the time that you release them. Once you've released those first few videos, you should be getting some green and red flags. Now, these are YouTube analytics that tell you what audience you attracted and which aspects of your videos they liked. The most important thing to understand here is if your audience was mainly interested in the topic and how you packaged it in the title and thumbnail, or if they were actually interested in the structure and style and format of the video. So to do that, open up the analytics on your most popular video, go to content, then content suggesting this video, and in here you'll see what other videos on YouTube recommended your video the most. Now, you want to review those videos one by one to see what elements of it match your video. Was it the topic? Was it the packaging? Was it the video structure or medium? The answer to these questions will inform you on what videos you should make next, assuming your goal is to maximize views from the current audience that likes your videos.